Hello my friends, a new axis of evil over here, Iran, Russia, China and North Korea. Well, yesterday I watched this biggest Chinese military parade and probably one of the biggest parades in human history. It was definitely a show. Trump's military parade is not even close to that one which was in China yesterday. I even streamed it on my other channel and Twitch. The link for that stuff is in the video description below. And it's not a coincidence that the Chinese leader decided to put Putin and Kim Jong-un, crazy dictators, close to him, because he's the one himself. It is the open signal to Europe, to United States, Canada, Australia, Japan, of course, that the world order is up to change, or at least they will try to change it in their own way, as dictators already tried to do it in the first half of the 20th century. Whether they're gonna use the military force, well, Putin is already using it in Ukraine as well as Kim Jong-un. By the way, Putin said that it was idea of Kim Jong-un to send his forces to Ukraine. It was not the proposal from Russia. And China, well, it has 3.5 years window to start their special military operation against Taiwan. Guys, from my feeling and understanding what is happening, I'm 90% sure that China will start this. First of all, everyone sees how weak is West and how weak is the United States of America in particular. For example, Donald Trump started tariff war against China and lost it successfully, and they will not apply any more tariffs on China because it will harm American economy a lot. The problem for Donald Trump that he probably doesn't understand the difference between allies and competitors. He says that he has good relations with China, North Korea and Russia. By the way, he said about it in today's press conference that he has good relations with those dictators, but in a few weeks, he said, yeah, again, few weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we'll see whether those relations are really good, he said. But in general, Trump applies tariffs on European Union partners, NATO partners, destroying relations, connections with friendly countries, making America more isolated. From economy perspective and also from military, because Donald Trump's plan is to reduce the number of the forces deployed in Europe, for example, by the time there is the biggest war for the last 80 years in Europe, or in the world, I would say. A very strange move, which is weakening allies. And also there is the question whether United States of America definitely protect their allies from NATO in case Russian attack on Europe. I would say more no than yes, judging on Donald Trump's rhetorics. Well, at least there were numerous of the statements from White House that Europe should take care about its own security. And European officials, politicians, they are still now in shock because the previous security plan counted on American involvement to protect NATO. But now no, and we see how Europe little by little starts to rearm. Not on a full scale, it takes lots of the time actually, and it creates one more window for Putin. A weak Donald Trump's administration, Europe is not yet fully ready to repel the Russian attack, so Putin might try to implement his worst scenario against NATO countries to check out the 5th article after all, which might show that allies are not that united, and it might open even Pandora box. That might show that NATO is as useless as United Nations organization, if the countries are not able to collectively protect their own members. I think it's actually the main reason for NATO to exist as an organization. Well, I think we're gonna speak about the possible attack on Europe a little later, but now with this cooperation, Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un and Putin, the scenario of escalation is more real than ever. Now let's go back to China parade. You see, yeah, they were always together, those dictators. And the parade itself was really a well-planned show, very, very massive. China really shows its massive forces, and this drone, it looks like the Russian drone, which was designed to fly with Sukhoi 57, but those drones, it's something new. I would say that China put some extra attention to drone technology, to missiles, and here you may see the laser anti-drone systems, which are rarely presented in any sort of the armies. There were also hypersonic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, drone interceptors. It all looked really stunning, I would say, for this military parade. So it was organized at a very, very high level. And also for the first time, China showed its ICBMs, for example, those ones, plus those huge missiles, the F-5 Charlie, which are able to strike any point on Earth with unlimited range. A warhead second stage, the first stage, really impressive and massive missile it is. Yeah, obviously China copies a lot of the technologies from the Western countries, from Russia. it copied before from the Soviet Union. Like, for example, those bombers, there are copies of Tupolev-16, which were retired long time ago, even in Soviet Union. But China continued to use those, so they have outdated technologies, but also at the same time they have really new technologies. It's all mixed, and here, for example, are their stealth jets. Yeah, this is unique for China. I mean, this kind of the design, because some other jets like this one, for example, they copied from Russia. It is Sukhoi 27 style airplane. And those look like F-35s with 2 engines. So the idea of this parade is obviously not the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the occupation of China, but to show the mighty force of China, first of all, and that dictators are united against West. It is the same background as in Russia 9th May celebrations, yeah? They parade just to show their mighty force. And Donald Trump already confirmed that he watched that parade, and in his statement in Truth Social he said, "Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America, President Trump." Which is, I would say, kind of the rare, truthful statement. Definitely dictators unite against West, or already has been united. But the thing that with this idiot president of the United States of America, there is no way to counteract to this major threat which occurred already. Because Donald Trump, with its actions against friends of the United States of America, against United States of America itself, because he intensifies the national division in the country itself, deploying National Guard left and right to democratic states, for example, I think it's not good for internal policy of the United States. He also weakens the United States economy. So with all of those actions, I don't think that he is really the leader for the time we're up to face. More about the special military operation which China may perform against Taiwan. Before, I was quite skeptical about it and the outcome of the mission for me. Well, it still looks kind of 50-50, but now I'm almost sure that America, United States of America, it will not protect its ally full scale. Taiwan has the great chance, if not being taken at once with a major strike, but at least being blocked for extensive period of time, and United States, they will do nothing, I guess. And allies, unfortunately, my prediction, will not have enough courage to defend Taiwan. Under previous White House administration, it was possible, and Joe Biden openly said that we're gonna protect Taiwan with our military. With Donald Trump, So inaction and weakness creates more action from your opponents, and we witness it live, unfortunately. Also about economy, private corporations, they see that something is wrong in the United States of America, that the new leadership may ruin business at once with those tariffs, again with strange policy in general, and China, unfortunately, is the way out for those corporations to start new business projects. They look at Communist China as more predicted and stable regime. So the sign is not good, absolutely, guys, and the fact that Russia propelled its project to build the power of Siberia finally in China, it also tells a lot. Yeah, not the Sila Siberia itself, but Sila Siberia 2. It's the power of Siberia, if we translate it from Russian. As the Chinese officials say, this line will be built in a record short time period. Finally, after many years of consultations, this project has received the green light from China. Moreover, China will invest into the building of this construction. Yeah, Russia also has its own investments there, Russian Gazprom. But before, China's position was, okay, Russia, build your gas pipeline and we're gonna buy gas from you, maybe. But you understand that it is the multi-billion project and Russia needs to have some sort of the reinsurances that China definitely will buy their gas. And 2 days ago, they signed papers that definitely China will build this pipeline together with Russia. And they will buy Russian gas, compensating losses which Gazprom obtained from not selling gas to Europe. Yeah, potentially China may cover all of those losses with this new pipeline, Sila Siberia 2, which is not good for us and for the world in general. Again, it is a cooperation between dictatorships and Russia will obtain enough funds to continue war. For now, it is against Ukraine, but you never know what might happen in the future because Russia is one of those few countries that may allow losses in the big war against Ukraine. Actually, aggression wars, yeah? And just imagine those losses, for example, to happen in United States of America, UK, even half of the Russian losses will take like 500,000 people losses for United Kingdom or for Germany, and not to defend those countries but to attack someone else. I think it is not possible. People would just get rid of their government. There will be protests, there will be everything. But in Russia, everyone is calm. In China, the same scenario. In North Korea too, because those are dictatorship countries. They control media and they control people's minds. Still, majority of Russians, for example, despite their losses, despite many failed operations in Ukraine starting from 2022, they still support Putin. For us, it sounds crazy, but it is really happening, and it is the advantage of autocracies against democracies. Because after all, governments in democratic countries, they depend on voters, on votes themselves, because there are elections, they are more or less okay and fair. But in dictatorship countries, nothing of that is happening, so those dictators may behave as they want to their people. And they may easily sacrifice even millions for their own needs. It's the classical behavior for every sort of the dictator. In Africa, in Latin America, in Europe, in Russia, everywhere it's the same. Even in Europe we have those kind of the strange clowns, puppets of Putin and China like Orban and Fico. They're basically the agents to destroy democracy of the European Union. Hungary and Slovakia keep pressure on Brussels over Russian sanctions list, yeah. As I told you, they'll continue to veto help for Ukraine, they'll continue to block sanctions for Russia. It's their usual thing, because they work for Russia. Alright, Putin. Putin said, yeah, for now there is still a difference. So there was the press conference of Vladimir Putin after the meeting and all of this parade stuff in China, where he mentioned that his plan is on the table, that in 2022 there was proposal for Ukraine to withdraw forces from Donbass and keep its sovereignty, but Ukraine violated some sort of the negotiations. So Putin creates the alternate reality for Donald Trump, for example, to believe into. Like he stated also that Russia responds on the Ukrainian strikes against the Russian infrastructure. Then in fact, Russia is the country which started to hit Ukrainian infrastructure at first. Since 2022, Russia is doing it, and just maybe for a couple of years or a year and a half, Ukraine intensified strikes on Russian oil facilities and their military on the Russian territory far behind the front lines. So Putin lies, Putin misleads, he covers the facts and put what he wants to show to Donald Trump, that Russia is not the aggressor state, Russia is defending, Russia is forced to strike Ukrainian infrastructure as a response. It's totally upside down, but the bad thing that Donald Trump could believe in that. So he said that proposal is still on the table from Russia for Ukraine to withdraw from Donbass, not yet occupied territories by Russia, yeah, and he says that Russia is going to reach the goals of the special military operation and the roots of the conflict. And Putin said that they're gonna reach those goals of the special military operation in any sort of the case, preferably diplomatic way for Ukraine just to surrender. But if not, they're gonna use military force, continue to use military force. That is what Putin says. So he is oriented to continue the war in Ukraine. And it's not just about Donbass. The goal for Putin is to cancel Ukraine, like the state. Yeah, preferably without military action, because Putin, after all, is losing his army, which he wants to use later on. But the war is still ongoing and Putin bet everything for it. And why do I always say that this war could last for many more years? Because I listen to what Putin says and his circle. Putin, in most of the cases, on his press conferences, statements, is straightforward. Every time he speaks about Ukraine, he says about the root causes of the war, the goals of the special military operation. He said about it yesterday. He said about it during the meeting with Donald Trump. He's very open with his demands and future vision of how to conquer Ukraine. And yeah, I'm again surprised that some of the media sources trying to interpret his words in other way. It's really strange. So from one side we have Russia, which wants to occupy Ukraine. It means reaching the goals of the special military operation. Just open it. Initial statements of 2022, demilitarization, denazification, which means cancellation of Ukraine. Like denazification is pro-Ukrainian thinking of people, yeah, pro-Ukrainian government, pro-Ukrainian Ukraine. They want to make second Belarus and then to cancel it completely with full annexation. And on the other hand, we have Ukraine, which is fighting for its identity, for Ukrainians, for not to serve for the Russian Empire any longer. Russian Empire, which occupied Ukraine for centuries. Yeah, at first it was the Russian Empire, then Soviet Union, right? And those two sides, they cannot live together. It's not possible. There will be no any kind of well, maybe temporary, very short ceasefires are possible, but in general, the war will continue. It will continue while Putin's regime is in power. Sometimes people ask what might happen if Putin passes away. Well, there are many of the variants, but there is also the chance for this war to continue even in that case, because if we recall the Afghan war, freaking 4 general secretaries of the Soviet Union have been changed, but war still continued. 3 of the secretaries had passed away for natural causes. So with the Russian regime, it also could be like that. But there is also the variant for internal fight in Russia, which might create the instability within the country. Everything of that, guys, we cannot predict, unfortunately, for now. But what we can predict is the continuation of the war. I don't see any sort of the reason for it to stop. And the only person right now who might command to stop is Putin. But he's not listening to Donald Trump, then Trump shouts, Putin, stop. No. Russia started this war, so Russia has to end it. But we see totally opposite attitude from Putin. He's as determined as in 2022. And Putin, he is not old as Trump. He's 72 years old, and potentially he can rule for maybe next 10 years at least. And speaking about the age, dictators actually touch this topic. For example, Xi Jinping said to Putin that earlier people rarely lived to 70 years old, but these days at 70 years you are still a child. And Putin was kind of active responding on that one. We have the translation from Mandarin here. Somehow microphone was left on. So Putin said that with the development of the biotechnology, human organs can be continuously transplanted and people can live younger and younger and even achieve immortality. Oh my God, don't tell this to Donald Trump. But we see how those dictators think. They want to live more to rule longer, right? Like 70 is okay. Yeah, we can transplant organs and live forever. Oh shit, that stuff really looks dystopian. Xi answered that there are predictions that this century there is the chance of also living to 150 years old. Well, I think that Xi spoke about it in general, but Putin here spoke about his own dreams to achieve immortality, because power is the biggest narcotics. And Putin, he really enjoys his power. He likes to be this dictator who started the massive war, the biggest one since the World War II. And yeah, he wants to live forever, in this case. It was the dream for, I think, many of the dictators, emperors with the same type of ruling as Putin. And about the meeting with Zelensky, Putin again openly said that Trump is just an idiot. He proposed to me, he said, to meet with Zelensky, but Zelensky is not a legitimate leader of Ukraine. According to Ukrainian constitution, Putin says Zelensky is expired president. There should be elections in Ukraine, and there also should be a referendum to recognize the territories occupied by Russia or not yet being occupied fully, yeah, as the Russian ones. They want to achieve it. And he said that if Donny and Zelensky really wants to meet, well, Zelensky may go to Moscow. And here Putin called Zelensky not a president, but the head of the president administration of Ukraine. So he's not legitimate for him, but the head of the president's administration is actually Yermak, who is a very close friend of Zelensky. And Russian propaganda plus other Russian officials, they call Zelensky a head of Ukrainian regime. Never ever you'll hear the president for Zelensky in the Russian media. Never. Or from the Russian officials. So it's vividly clear that no meeting is possible between Putin and Zelensky. Russia increased drone attacks again after quiet summer. You may see, yeah, definitely the intensified strikes, mostly using Shahid drones. Actually, Russia developed a new type of the Shahid drone. Yeah, they continue to modernize those death machines, which according to the article from the Telegraph, they do with the help of China. China has direct military contracts with Russian Defense Ministry, supplying all of the possible gear, so the Russian analogs of the Shahid drones, Iranian-made drones, they are not the same any longer. They may look the same, but inside they're already different, because Russia puts China electronics there, and also China cooperates with FPV drone production, so China supports Russia for now as hard as it can. The upgraded Shahid drones, they use camera, made in China, antenna, made in China, communication equipment, made in China. So the drone operator may control the flight path of the vehicle, even being located in Russia. This could be definitely a breakthrough, and now we'll not say that Russia accidentally hit something, yeah? They precisely hit on civilian infrastructure to terrorize Ukrainian civilians in general. So Russia has standard Shahid drones, jet drones, those camera drones, and many more to come, unfortunately. And just yesterday there was the strike on Ukraine with cruise missiles and drones. Russia again used strategic aviation. But there is the intelligence report from Ukraine that some of the bombers failed to conduct the mission. 3 of 2 airplanes, one failed to launch missiles, the other one was struck by lightning and was forced to cancel the mission because of the damage to the cockpit. Wow, seems like Zeus is even on the Ukrainian side. And the third one failed to take off again because of the technical malfunction. All of those airplanes were produced in the Soviet Union. No unit was made in Russia. What Russia might do is just to modernize those airplanes with the new electronics, new software and everything. But build the one from scratch, it's not possible. Russia lost those technologies of the more developed civilization, let's say. And you know, guys, to underline, to make the final conclusion of today's video, we see how definitely dictators want to achieve their goals, how they unite, and their unification is more robust compared to Western countries, especially in military cooperation, like for example Russia and North Korea, or drone technologies as China and Russia, and their economies are getting also more united. Yeah, we speak a lot about the Russian economy decline, but if Russia has those powerful allies and China is the second economy in the world, do you really think that they can let Russia to collapse, really? I think that China needs Russia to achieve its goal. It needs Russia also for cheap, available resources, and as the military force to threaten Europe. So for China, this war is very profitable, and they will not let Russian regime to collapse. That's their go-to project, I would say. Unfortunately, yeah, so I don't see that Russian economy might collapse in the current situation for many years. And despite what crisis Russia could have, Russian people are still like volatile society, and Russia will support its military as well as China will support Russia's military. It's the interest, political interest of China, and they are ready to sacrifice a lot. And the agreements which were signed between Russia and China, they tell a lot about the increasement of cooperation. West should take those threats seriously, but I don't see it's happening on a full scale. No, West is not united as well as those dictators, sadly, guys. And the confrontation, the big one, it's gonna happen. Maybe isolated conflicts like in Ukraine could spark also in Europe, Baltic states, Finland, who knows, Taiwan, yeah, all around there will be escalation. We're at the new age of this big confrontation. My friends, about front lines, and not only I'm gonna update you in my next video. For now, please don't forget to press your like to this video and also subscribe for the channel. And my separate thanks for Patreon supporters. Guys, thank you so much for motivating me to film more and more. The link for my Patreon page is in the video description right below. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.